Hello, today we want to talk about an industry which is continuously growing, and many people might think about renewable energies in terms of solar energy or wind energy. In fact, we want to talk about the pellet industry and more specifically the production of pellets. And today in the studio I've got two of our experts. Remotely we will be connecting to Sergey Matveyev.
Hi guys, thank you for inviting me to join this important discussion.
And in the studio with me today, we've got our expert for bearings, Frank Reichmann, who will explain later the importance of bearings in the pellet industry.
Hi Karel, it's a pleasure to be here.
So for a start, we first need to know what a pellet press is and what pellets are and how they are produced. Sergey is at the plant in Latvia right now. Let's have a look.
Yes. So the wood pellets are basically made from the wood waste, what you can see behind me. Yes, and wood pellets itself, it's an economical and ecological modern type of the fuel what is used for the power plants to heat public houses, residential houses, some stock facilities, production buildings and so on. Yes, and the heart of the wood pellet plant is a pellet press, and for that I have something to show you. So the raw material gets inside the press via this chamber, so wood chips basically they are entering this area and then they are pressed with the means of the rollers outside through the holes we can see here in this die, and then you get the ready to use pellets already outside, and then they are accumulated, and with the means of the conveyor belt they are transported to the packaging line.
That was a very nice introduction of pellet presses, Sergey. Thank you very much. But we wouldn't be here if there wasn't any problems and challenges. So Frank, maybe you can explain to us what problems we have with bearings.
Sure, of course Karel, with pleasure. Like hardly any other bearing application, the bearings in pellet presses are suffering from premature fatigue and damage. The lifetime of bearings is calculated according to the standard of DIN ISO 281 that delivers the lifetime calculation equation that includes the so-called life adjustment factor AISO. Once AISO is low, the lifetime of the bearing will be short. Unfortunately, the conditions in a pellet press are in a way that results in very low factors AISO. Therefore, these bearings are suffering from a very short lifetime.
So, in this wood pellet press, the bearings are located in these rollers, and when these rollers are pressing wood chips out, usually the layer of the wood chip is not straight, what makes certain misalignments, and the jumps what creates the vibration to the rollers to press the pellets out via the die. The temperatures in this room are also from time to time differs. It can go from 100 to 170 degrees C in some places, so this is also another challenge for the lubricant. And what we already have here, high temperatures, high loads, vibrations, and of course this is important what kind of lubricants you are using for these rollers, for the bearings in these rollers.
So Sergey, thank you very much for explaining us the challenges. Frank, can you explain to us how to manage these challenges?
Sure. Previously, we have already discussed the importance of the lifetime factor AISO. AISO can be found in the diagrams of the bearing manufacturers depending on several parameters. Sergey has already mentioned most of them. We have contamination by dust, we have high load, we have temperatures, but there's one other very important factor that plays a role here and that should come into the picture. This is the viscosity ratio kappa. The viscosity ratio kappa is the ratio between the real viscosity in the application and a so-called rated viscosity, which is calculated based on the conditions inside of the bearings. Once we have a viscosity higher than the rated viscosity, the kappa is higher than 1, and we are in the regime of fluid lubrication, which is desirable. Once the viscosity is lower than the rated viscosity, then kappa is below 1, and we are in the regime of mixed friction, which will cause wear, fatigue, and short lifetime of the bearing. However, The viscosity of the base oil is depending on the temperature. In this example, you can see a very proven grease for pellet presses, our Barotemp 490 RS, and the dependence of its base oil viscosity on the temperature. Here the temperature is in linear scale, horizontal, and here the kinematic viscosity is in logarithmic scale, vertical. The minimum viscosity that we should have is the rated viscosity, and for a typical bearing in a pellet press, this should be 26.6 square millimeter per second. But we should also not exceed too much of viscosity, and therefore generally the recommendation is to have maximum 4 times the rated viscosity. So in this range, we have the optimal conditions for operation of our bearing. And this refers also, or is directly related to a certain temperature range. And in this case, this temperature range ends at 109 degrees Celsius. Meaning, once we exceed 109 degrees Celsius, our viscosity will drop underneath the rated viscosity, and we get into the regime of mixed friction, meaning we have fatigue, wear, shortened lifetimes. Here we have now the example of a higher base oil viscosity. In this case, 1000 square millimeter per second at 40 degrees. And here you can see the temperature range, the optimal temperature range, is shifting. And the upper service temperature goes up to 151 degrees Celsius, meaning any temperature below 151 degrees Celsius will still be in fully hydrodynamic conditions. And now remember what Sergei has said. Sergei has mentioned temperatures of 150 that often occur in these presses. So if you want to keep the pellet press bearings in a range of fully flooded hydrodynamic lubrication, you require a viscosity in this range. And this is why we have introduced a new grease for pellet presses, our Barotemp 1000 RS. Our new Barotemp 1000 RS has such a high base oil viscosity. And to keep it pumpable, even in winter times, we have selected a completely synthetic base oil, and also the thickener is polyurea, meaning this complete grease is fully synthetic. We have already conducted tests in several plants globally, and the results have been overwhelming. In each of these examples, we have reached very much higher lifetimes of the bearings than with the lubricants they have been using before. Therefore, now Barotemp 1000 RS has proven its efficiency as a new lubricant for pellet press bearings.
Thank you very much, Frank, for this detailed explanation about how the viscosity affects on the bearing lifetimes. Besides this, it is also important is the proper amount supplied during the roller assembly on the first fill, and the required amount is supplied to the roller during the machine in operation.
That was a lot of information. Thank you very much. Sergei, maybe you can just list all the advantages again.
Of course. Bechem products, what are specially designed for this industry, are more resistant to the high loads, are resistant to the high temperatures, offering long grease lifetime and offering proper sealing effect. And summarizing all this, this will bring less wear and less load on the bearings of the machinery, and automatically reduce the downtime, increase the production output, and increase the lifespan of your equipment, and in the end it will save you money.
Guys, that was very interesting. Thank you very much for all the information. And if you guys are interested in any of our products, please write email to Sergei and Frank, or contact them by telephone number. They will be very happy to support you. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you, Karel. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.